two main band names to consider here, and technically a bit more. It's a messy one, but I'm hoping to chronicle the tumultuous collaboration between Crispin Gray and Katie Jane Garside that resulted mainly in the bands Daisy Chainsaw and Queen Adreena. So it's the classic story of a guitar guy who advertised specifically for a female singer because he wasn't quite convincing enough as a female himself. Relatable. And what he got was something no one can be ready for, called Katie Jane Garside. Her histrionic shrieking over his songs shows an absolute powerhouse of a vocalist, but one who at the time was tameless. On the songs on here that are oriented to be singles, it works. It's been honed down into a craft. She's very slightly playing by the song's rules. But then there's the rest, and for something that's such a good idea as a band, a collaboration that went on to make some amazing work, more than half of this is awkward filler. Partly because Katie hasn't learned the songs, which I'm sure at the time you could have said was a unique advantage of it, and like a reflection of their live sound. As a chaotic live performance, this would have worked, but as an album, And then there's some tracks that just never had any potential. Dull ambient bits, and that slide guitar one that Katie didn't even bother replacing Crispin's vocals on. Maybe there's an EP's worth of really good noise punk on 11teen, but I can't really advocate it as a full listen. And then they didn't even last. The second Daisy Chainsaw album has a different vocalist on it. In fact, a version with Crispin on vocals has also been published separately, but I'm not going to rank that alongside these as it's just a less good version of this. Losing such an outstanding vocalist is not going to do you very well, but I say outstanding across the career, really from her recorded work thus far, maybe outstanding like Mike Corr's work was. To replace her, again singing Crispin's songs, is Susie sound-alike. And those much more traditional melodic vocals, I know it's not exactly properly traditional, but much more than Katie Jane, bring this much closer to the noise rock of the UK of the time, like Therapy or Silverfish. However, they have now delivered a properly competent album. The reuse of one track just shows what that track would sound like with some self-understanding, and the new material is just a lot more consistent and thorough, if more plain. I mean, we're still talking noise rock here, it's still out on the fringes, but it's at least within the fringe this time. I think 11teen gets celebrated for just how edgy it was, but I've moved on since 1992, and I can be mature enough to admit that they made a better record with the less interesting singer, the one who sang the notes. Okay, so there's a hiatus in that collaboration. Now, if I really wanted to make this video detailed, I could throw in all of Crispin's other projects, including, like, that same band trying out different singers, different band names, very small publishing, but full albums that I am skipping in this video. Basically, if you follow Crispin's extensive career, you'll get his specialty, which is those 1 second long chromatic riffs that are just so crunchy and awesome. They kind of all involve the hands staying in the same place and the peripheral fingers doing something. That's the formula, and he somehow found hundreds of different riffs in that formula, and they're all tasty. But kind of whether they float or drown as songs depends on which vocalist he's got with him, and that's why I'm moving on to Queen Adreena. So I don't know the musicians, it's all music that sounds like it was born out of difficulty, and the live shows look intentionally exhausting, galling. What I do know is the music. Here Katie brings this focus she's found. It's not in focus with our world, but it's in focus with itself, in its odd dreamscape. She's now writing her parts and brings this pagan fade nymph quality to it. She could be somewhat credited with originating the kinder horror aesthetic, which conflates sexuality and objectification with childishness to show off how dodgy it is. Really, Katie herself doesn't much go for the sexualization part, she just incorporates nudity. But the cooing and moaning and every extent of her voice that's not in the trained singer's manual makes her an amazing vocalist. They're like all that's great about PJ Harvey, but distilled to the bones, all thriller without the troubles of intellect, running on instinct. It's this rock music that belongs to the earth, the soil. As well as the filthy riff songs, they've found a way to do a kind of creepy, nearly folk frailcore vibe that still makes the songs worth listening to. That's what Daisy Chainsaw missed out on. These studio atmospherics are a great complement to the just feral rocking out. This time they really know what they're doing. They released it with a short film and it just shows how thoroughly they've decided on their aesthetic. Maybe not consciously, very naturally really. It's very gothic but with no real relation to other music of the time that may have been called gothic. It's gothic on its own terms. And yeah, here's a masterful album that demonstrates that. They've got a fairer system now where Katie's an active ingredient in their very essence, not just sprinkled atop it. They're a bit of a concept band at this stage, and it's that clarity that maintains it as their best work. Which left them ready to do it again, just with more certainty, more loudness, more hooks, stronger riffs, stronger band identity. Basically, this is the one where they've turned it up to 11. This one's more for the audience. It feels like it's playing by the rules of grunge, which is a great way to spend an album. And then a kinda overlong one in a cowboy font. They've chosen the right way to go forward, exploring more diverse ideas. It just doesn't quite maintain the success of those first two. It's kind of a band at their best who don't have to concentrate on giving their best at this point, so they're overstocking their set list with very satisfying, if not impressive things that won't be anyone's favorites, but it's still good pizza. It's still good, I just think it sadly has to be defined by how little I have to say about it. There is a kind of demos album. I'll get to that in post. Yeah, this is not cheap, which demos should be, unless you find it online for free. It's also not worth getting or even hearing. There's very little overlap with their published work, so you could say it's an extra full album, but it's just not finished enough for me to sincerely rank it, or interesting. There's nothing revealed by the Kills version of Queen Adreena, it's just them with less. And that also describes the creative content. Then there's one where the well has kind of run dry. The only thing this really brings to their discography is a fun new way to title songs with brackets all over them. They're stocking up on songs again, but now the band sounds creatively bored, and in performance too. But there is the Crows, and Turn Pink, so yeah. I got to one more I thought I liked, and then I realized it was just a retread of a track from Butcher, and that's why I thought I liked it. A bad habit now is dragging out the songs, which would have been fine back when there were songs that could sustain it. But the actual content just feels like a Queen Adreena facsimile. They're going through the motions at this point. It's still worth a perusal to see if anything sticks out to you, but it's just not up to scratch. Maybe that was a sign of Queen Adreena losing momentum, and it's at that point that Katie Jane left this second band. But I'm including one more here, as last time she left a band and the rest of them went on to make more music, I included that. It had the same band name. Almost the same happened here. The bassist took over on vocals. They added some drum overkill, but this does feel like it's intended as a continuation. And maybe that's what holds it back, because of the limits of Crispin's palette. He can't really offer anything different at this stage. But he's so good at that. There's a bit more of a punky, accessible vibe to this. Kind of going back to the cute, fun titles of the Daisy Chainsaw singles, probably because Crispin's picked the pen up again. By having a refreshed concept, they're more fun and better than a burnt-out Queen Adreena. To add to the support-at simple gothy punk bouncy castle that leads this record, Nomi writes the best tracks here with more breadth, darkness, and depth. So both Katie and Crispin have continued in music very separately. I don't expect them to come back together at all. Crispin just in his way of being a guided missile of a musician who absolutely commits for decades on decades. Katie and these different collaborations, the first of which explores some quieter textures that kind of passed me by on the wind. Maybe I can tune into it at some point. But this most recent stuff I really like the sound of. These are two singular talents that aligned for a while, but separately that just means there'll be more music in total. For a few years in the early 2000s were an amazing force because of their perfect ingredients. They'll always feel anachronistic. They were punk when they should have been Britpop. There was a whole metal scene that they weren't quite traditional enough for, but were much more hardcore than. So let's just appreciate them on their own amazing merits.